Human behavior and how it impacts our decisions is more intrinsically linked than you can possibly imagine, especially the impact that human behavior has on our finances. That's why the very first chapter of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, talks all about human behavior. You know, one of the first perspectives that I ever had on human behavior, I got from a good friend, longtime radio and TV personality here in Central Florida, an individual by the name of John Bud, as he was known to his fans, Hedinger. And he said to me once, many, many years ago, you know, Joel, negative news sells better than positive news. And you know what? He was right. I mean, I think we forget that all of these places where we get our information from, media companies, television, internet, Facebook, TikTok, all of that, they're not in the information dissemination business. They are in the advertising business. And if you're going to make more money as an advertiser, right, or charge more money, well, then you need to have more eyes on your page. And so consequently, once you kind of understand that, it in essence really does change how we react to the information that we get. The role of negativity, we can't say that enough. It's just such a harsh regulation or regulator of our behavior as human beings and how we ultimately make decisions. In the book, we mentioned 4 distinct studies that underscore how much negativity impacts specifically our ability to make good financial decisions. One of the studies was from University of Michigan. It found that people that were exposed to negative news about the economy were more likely to make conservative financial decisions. Another study out of the University of California, Berkeley, found that people exposed to negative news about the stock market were more likely to sell their stocks even if it meant taking a loss. Yet another study, there was 4 of them, so we're on number 3. University of Chicago found that people exposed to negative news about the economy perceived the risk of investing to be higher than those who were not exposed to negative news in the first place. And then lastly, a number of studies have concluded this one. Humans experience about triple the amount of pain from a loss than they do the pleasure, the emotional response you get from the pleasure of a gain. So in other words, if we lose $1,000, we feel an emotional response that is 3 times greater than our feelings about gaining $1,000. All of this research has uncovered no less than 7 different cognitive biases that mess with our minds and our finances. And so in the book, we go into great detail about what those biases are and how they ultimately impact the financial decisions that we make. For the purposes of this video, we're going to just kind of hit the highlights on all 7 of them, beginning with the first one that we mentioned in the book, in chapter 1 of the book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, and that is familiarity, right? Familiarity is this notion that our minds use what we already know against us when making financial decisions, right? Because the reality is we're all sort of wired to prefer something familiar over something that is unfamiliar. The example that I use in the book is the Sears Roebuck catalog of my youth. That was when you actually used to get catalogs in the mail. And many people continue to own Sears Roebuck stock because of that familiarity with their products and the catalog and those kinds of things, well past the time when Sears Roebuck was still a viable retail business. The second cognitive bias that we talk about in the book is the concept of anchoring. And so what anchoring is when you rely way too much on the first piece of information that you receive about a particular topic. And that means that you're less open to new information and perspective. And when it comes to investments and the economy and the kinds of decisions, understand how quickly everything is happening out there these days. So the need to reassess on a regular basis is pretty crucial. But the familiarity bias ultimately works against you. Another one that we mentioned in the book, oversimplification. When we try and simplify complex financial information or situations into sort of easy to understand concepts. For example, making a YouTube video that deals with all of the human behavior that impacts your financial decisions would be a good example of why that might not be thorough enough to satisfy everything that you really need to know to make good financial decisions. Or if I really wanted to cut the time down of the video down to just a few seconds, I could have done something on TikTok. But you get the idea. Those are all designed to just oversimplify things. And the reality is that can really hinder your comprehension of financial concepts and some of the different things that work together. We often talk about how investments and taxes really need to be geared together so that you're making the best possible decision. But far too often we gravitate to the easy formula or the easy rule on that. And we certainly see that the complexities that involve a financial decision, such as retirement planning or income planning, those kinds of things are all too often oversimplified. Another cognitive bias that we talk about in the book, of course, is hindsight. And that is simply the tendency for people to believe that they could have predicted an event's outcome after it has occurred. Oh, I saw this coming. Oh, I did this. The reality is that there are no crystal balls, and there's certainly no way to predict the future accurately and consistency. The fifth cognitive bias that we talk about in chapter 1 on human behavior in our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, is the concept of the endowment effect. And this is where people tend to overvalue objects or investments they own because of personal attachment. So that may mean that you're holding on to some underperforming investments. Maybe that was because your parents own the stock of company XYZ, but company XYZ is still in the business of making buggy whips. And buggy whips, once the car got invented, sort of went out of business. If you're still owning the company because your parents owned it, then that's not a particularly good choice. But the endowment effect makes us want to hold on to those types of investments because of that personal attachment longer than perhaps what we should. Status quo is the next one. And after all, who doesn't like the status quo, right? We all resist change in some form or fashion, right? The problem is that it may cause people to avoid taking risks or trying new things. And when we think about the world today, there's certainly a lot of new things on a regular basis that come up. And certainly in the book, we talk about the status quo or how to avoid, kind of that status quo effect by setting specific goals and creating a plan for making changes, which then gives you a sense of direction and purpose. And then lastly, the seventh cognitive bias that we talk about in the book is the bandwagon effect, right? Oftentimes you hear about joining the bandwagon in sports, but it certainly applies in finances as well. If we think back to the dot-com stocks, or maybe it was the meme stocks or crypto, or there's just a litany of those types of examples that exist. And it seems like every year the bandwagon plays a different tune anyway, so makes it even more difficult to really stay on top of where you need to be. And so by the time everybody is sort of talking about what everybody else is doing, chances are it's probably way too late to start to invest in that. So those are the 7 cognitive biases that ultimately impact the financial decisions that we make. So the question that we ask is, how about you? Have you ever had any of these behaviors impact your finances? Because many of these basic human behaviors can certainly lead you in the wrong direction, especially from a financial perspective. So for more information about the role of human behavior in your financial decisions and some of the things you can try to reduce the impact that it has, make sure you read Chapter 1 of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. You can get your free copy of our book by texting free copy along with your name and address to 407-791-0070. That number again to text to request your free copy of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, 407-791-0070. My name, of course, is Joel Garris, certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, and the author of the book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. Thanks for listening to this video.